Hi, my name is Brittany J Jones. In this video, we're going to be sewing along to the new McCall's 8354 pattern. This is a girl's pattern. The pattern features a dress, a slip dress, and a jacket. In this video, we're going to be sewing along with view C on the pattern. Let's go ahead and review the pattern pieces that we need to cut out to make view C now. Again, we're going to be sewing along to McCall's 8354, and we're going to be making view C on this pattern. If you have any questions concerning the type of fabrics that would work great for these projects, you can flip onto the back. There is a list of suggested fabrics. For view A is faux fur. For view B, you have stretch knits only. So that's tricot, jerseys, interlock. And view C is for knit laces and knit netting. There's also more information on the back concerning the type of notions that you need to pick up, as well as lining fabrics. So again, if you have any questions concerning the type of fabrics and also the notions that you need to purchase, be sure to look on the back of the pattern envelope. Let's review the pattern pieces that we will need to cut out to make view C on this pattern. We will need to cut out pattern piece number 5. This is the bodice front. We need to cut 1 on the fold. Pattern piece number 6. This is the bodice back. We need to cut 1 on the fold. Pattern piece number 7, this is the neckband, we need to cut 1. Pattern piece number 8, this is the sleeve, we need to cut 2. Pattern piece number 9, this is the guide for elastic. We do not need to cut this out of fabric, we will just cut this out of elastic. Pattern piece number 10, this is the ruffle, we need to cut 6 on the fold. Pattern piece number 11, this is the skirt front and back, we need to cut 2 on the fold. And pattern piece number 12, this is the skirt front and back flounce. We need to cut 2 on the fold. For fabric, I'm going to be using this knit fabric here. This is a Riley and viscose blend, so it has a really nice light weight to it. I am opting for this over lace simply because I'm making this for my daughter and I know that she would prefer this over lace. If I made it in lace, she'd never wear it. So I'm making it out of something that I know she would wear, but I'm also keeping in mind that it is knit, just so that I'm still in the parameters of the suggested fabrics for the project. It suggested knit lace and knit netting. I'm just using a knit fabric. So just keep that in mind. If the suggested fabrics is not what you would actually wear, just keep in mind that it's just a suggestion and you can absolutely pick a different fabric that's more for your personal style. Let's go ahead and get started sewing. To begin, the first thing that we're going to do is stitch along our shoulders and side seams. So you want to go ahead and open out your fabric. And with right sides facing, you want to grab your pins, match up your notches, and pin in place. Once we have it all pinned, you can go ahead and stitch your seams. I will be using a zigzag stitch for this project. I'll also have in an 80-12 jersey needle. And for finishing off my seams, I'll be using a 4-thread overlocker. Let's go ahead and get started sewing. Okay, I have my front and back sewn together along the shoulder seams as well as the side seams. Here's a look at my seams along the inside and how I finished off my seam allowance. The next thing we could do is we could put this to the side and go ahead to grab our neckband. For our neckband, you want to fold your neckband in half, matching up your center back seam. So this is our neckband pattern piece. Here's our center back seams. You want to fold it in half so that we can stitch the center back seams together. I've done that here on this piece here. I have my center back seam sewn and I pressed my seam open flat. Once you have it pressed open, then you can fold it in half along the fold line with wrong sides facing and give that a press as well. So when you're done, your neckband should look like this, ready to be attached to the neck edge of the top. So with right sides facing, we're going to put the center back seam to the back. You also should have transferred some notches along the front. We're going to match those up and also match up the center front and just pin everything in place. Once we have the neckband pinned on, we can go ahead and stitch it. We're going to stitch in a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then we can trim our seam and press our band up. Let's go ahead and stitch it in place now. Okay, I have the neckband sewn on. As you can see, I trimmed and finished it off with the serger, and I pressed my seam so that the seam is facing down toward the bodice and the neckband is out. Now we want to go and do a row of edge stitching really close around the neckband that will help to keep the seam allowance facing down into the bodice. So let's go ahead and do the edge stitch now. Once we have the edge stitch on, and I did do my edge stitch with a straight stitch, not a zigzag stitch. You can choose if you prefer to do a straight stitch or a zigzag stitch. Now that we have the edge stitch on, we can go ahead and put this to the side and start to work on the sleeves. To begin working on our sleeves, the first thing that we want to do is to do ease stitching along the top of the sleeve cap. So I've done 2 rows of basting stitches here, and basting stitches is the longest length stitch on your machine. So it's normally at a 2.5. You want to go ahead and lengthen that up to as far as your machine can go. And then you just want to do 2 rows of basting stitches right between the small circles that we transferred. We don't have to take it all the way down to the notches. Just ease it right between those circles. And you want to do it one on the seam line and the other one inside of the seam line about 1/4 inch away. After you have that done, you want to make sure that you transfer your markings for your elastic casing. I've transferred my fold lines here. The bottom line here is my fold line, so I'm just going to fold up right along that fold line. You can put pins in it if you'd like, and then I'm going to stitch right along my stitching line. So again, we're folding up along our fold line, and then we're going to stitch along our stitching line. So we're going to do that for both of the sleeves so that we are creating a casing for the elastic. So again, transfer your fold line and your stitching line, fold up along your fold line, and then stitch along your stitching line. Okay, once you have your tucks sewn, here's mine here. This is the right side of the fabric. You want to go ahead and press it up. And then you want to grab pattern piece number 9. That is our elastic guide. Cut 2 pieces of 1/4 inch elastic the length of the guide. I'm going to attach one end to a safety pin and just feed it through the casing opening. Now we're going to secure the ends of the elastic, so you can just go back and forth a few times here just to stitch across again to secure the elastic into the casing. Go ahead and do your other sleeve the same way. Now that we have the elastic secured on the inside, we can lay our sleeve right sides facing. And now we're going to stitch our sleeve seam. You want to make sure that you still keep your tuck facing up. So just get everything nice and smooth. Make sure that there's no gathers in the seam allowance. And again, just make sure that you have your tuck facing up. Match up your seam here and pin in place. Go ahead and pin your other sleeve the same way, and then we're going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Again, make sure you have your tuck facing up. Okay, once we have our sleeve seam sewn, you can see I finished it off with the serger. Now we can go ahead and insert it into the bodice. So I'm going to grab my bodice here, and we need to make sure that we find our single notch and our double notch. The single notch goes toward the front, the double notch to the back. I'm just going to turn my sleeve out right sides facing. So I'm going to find the armhole for this sleeve. I'm going to make sure that I line up my seams first, my side seam with my sleeve seam. I'm going to pin there. And now I'm going to start to pull on my ease stitches to ease in the sleeve cap so that it fits into the armhole. So just pull up on your basting stitches. You should have transferred a circle that matches up to the shoulder seam. Go ahead and pin there. I transferred a notch, so I am lining mine up. Okay, once you have your sleeve pinned in, we're going to stitch around it at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then we're going to stitch again 1/4 of an inch away to do a double stitch. Then we can trim close to the second stitching. For my second stitching, I'm just going to use my serger to trim and also finish the edge. You're going to do this for both sleeves, so go ahead and install and pin in your other sleeve the same way. Once you have the sleeves installed, it should look something like this. Now we can go ahead and put the bodice to the side and start to work on the skirt. For pattern piece 11, we are going to open out right sides facing. And we're going to pin and stitch the side seams. Now that we have the side seams pinned, we can start stitching at the bottom. You want to back stitch here and stitch all the way to the top, back stitch when you get there. Once you have the sides of the front and back skirt sewn, again pattern piece number 11, we can put this to the side and start to work on the ruffles. Using two of the ruffles, we're going to open them out, match them up right sides facing like so, and we're going to pin along the side seams. We're going to stitch at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then we want to put gathering stitches along the upper edge of the ruffle. So again, here's our gathering piece here. We are stitching our side seams together. So this is the fold. Stitch your side seams together, then we're going to gather along the upper edge of the ruffle. There are no indicating markers as far as notches on which side is the upper edge, so you can just pick a side and just do 2 rows of gathering stitches. Gathering stitches are done using basting stitches, so go ahead and lengthen out to your longest machine stitch length and just do 2 rows of gathering stitches all the way around between the seam allowances. So you don't want to gather into your seam allowance after you have it stitched. You just want to start at your stitching line and stitch all the way around, making sure you stop here and then start on the other side and go to the other end of the seam allowance doing your gathering stitches. Let's go ahead and do that now. Now that we have the ruffles sewn together, we've pressed out our seam and we've gathered along the upper edge. We're going to turn our skirt right side out. We're going to pin with the side seams matching. Make sure that you have the right side of your ruffle facing up, so it should be the right side of the ruffle facing up as well as the right side of the fabric. So match up your side seams here, pin in place. I'm going to match up the other one, making sure that my ruffle is not twisted. And now we can just pull up on our gathers so that it matches here on the front and the back of the skirt. So I'm just going to grab 2 of my basting stitches here for the front and start to gather up the ruffle. Go ahead and adjust and distribute your gathers so there's no just one pile of clumps of gathers, that everything is just evenly distributed. Okay, once you're happy with your gathers, go ahead and match it up and just pin it in place. All right, after you have your ruffle all adjusted and pinned to the skirt, we can go to the sewing machine and we're just going to baste this in place just to keep everything together before we attach it to the bodice. Now that we have the ruffle basted on, we're going to grab our bodice and we're going to pin it right sides facing. Want to make sure that you match up your side seams and pin in place. Pin the remaining of the lower edge to the bodice to the skirt, making sure that all the raw edges are even. Now that you have the skirt pinned to the bodice, we can go ahead and stitch around and a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then you want to stitch again 1/4 of an inch away from that and trim close to your second stitching. Or if you're like me, I'm going to use my second stitching for my serger, so I'm going to stitch it all the way around 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then I'm just going to serge off my edges to clean it up and also to act as that second stitching. Let's go ahead and do it now. Okay, once you have your skirt with the ruffle attached to the bodice, you want to press your seam going up. So here's a look at mine. On the inside, I have my seam going up toward the bodice. So once you have that done, go ahead and give it a good press. And we're going to attach the flounce, pattern piece number 12, the same exact way that we did for the skirt. So as you can see here, I've gone ahead and basted my ruffle onto the flounce. And so now I'm just going to place it right sides facing to the lower edge here. You should have transferred some circles that correspond to the markings on the flounce. I transferred little notches. So I'm just going to match everything up and go ahead and pin it in place. And we're going to stitch it the same exact way that we did for the skirt. All right, once you have your flounce attached with your ruffle, go ahead and press your seam going up toward the dress. For the hems of this dress, the hems are left raw, but depending on the type of fabric that you have, you may want to finish. I'm going to leave the hems on this dress raw. The knit is not fraying or unraveling, so I think I'm good. Once you have everything pressed, you are all done with your dress. Well, that is all for the sew along, and I really do hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them down below. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications so you know when the next sew along goes live. Until then, blessings everyone. Bye.